Alright, so independent and dependent, okay? You learned a little bit about variables last year. Okay, what is a variable? An unknown number or a letter or, things like that. You variables X, Y, Z, right? M, B, all that stuff, variables. Okay, well, independent and dependent are just independent and dependent variables. Okay, they mean certain things. And they're really, really easy, or they should be easy. Your independent is always your X value. Always. So, there's several ways to understand it X value wise. It could be you could look at it as the input, it's inside the equation, and it creates the dependent variable. So like right here in my examples, y equals 2x plus 1. Well, that x right there is your independent variable. It's an x. Whatever goes there, that's your independent variable. Okay, you can look at it as tables. Your whole x column can be an independent variable because it deals with x. And then you can look at a graph. Your x-axis is your independent variable. So like, think about in junior high when you had graphs and they labeled the x-axis with a word or titled it. That's your independent variable. Independent variable is your x. That's it. That's all to it. So always think independent is your x value. Okay? Independent is your x value. So, if independent is your x value, dependent would be your y value, because we're talking about x and y's here. Okay, x and y's. So if you look at this equation, y equals 2x, there's only two letters, x goes with independent, so that means the y's got to go with the dependent. Okay, yes?
Do we do go to Chromebooks or under a journal?
Either one.
Okay.
Your choice. If you want to write it in your spiral and then transfer it into your Chromebook later,
Have to put it in the Chromebook?
you don't have to.
Okay. I'm just gonna keep it.
Just make a folder. Alright, does everybody got this top part where from independent to these examples? No?
No.
Okay. I'll leave it up there for a second. I'm going to go ahead and scroll a little bit so that you can actually see. Is that better? Okay, so your dependent is your y value. It's your output. It's outside the equation by itself. And it depends on the independent variable. Okay, it depends on something else. So y equals 2x plus 1, your y is your dependent. If you have a table, your y column is your dependent. If you have a graph, your y-axis is your dependent. It's just the opposite. Independent's all x, so that means dependent's going to be all y. There you go. Good. It's very, very simple. Alright, so now look at the paper you picked up. That looks, or not you picked up, I handed out to you while you were finishing your test. Okay? Alright, so it's kind of hard to see up here on the screen, so make sure you're looking closely at your paper. Okay? Now, independent variable. Now, one thing you got to understand about an independent variable, it's usually a quantity of something. So if you want to write quantity, now, quantity, what does quantity mean? How many of something, a number of something, like number of days, number of hours, number of weeks, number of months, number of something. Got it? Dependent is usually going to be a total amount. Total amount of dollars, total amount of this in the end, stuff like that. Okay, so that's a good way to kind of keep it understandable. Okay, so number of hours you study for a test. Example, number of hours you study for a test, your test score. Okay, you get a total grade in the end, right? Okay, so that'd be a dependent. Here's some other examples. Number of gallons in your gas tank. Okay, so what could go here?
Distance that you travel.
There you go. Total distance traveled with that gas. Okay, so then we have a blank on number 2 under independent, but under dependent it says your IQ. IQ stands for intelligent quotient, like an IQ test. Your IQ, let's say, I don't know, 1,000, I don't know. Okay, mine's 5. So what would be independent variable if your total IQ is a certain total number? Number of questions. Good. Okay, so number 3. The number of calories you eat each day. So think about when you go to lunch, whatever you eat. How many calories is in each of the foods you eat? That's independent. Number of total calories. So if we do number of each, and then dependent would be the total amount of calories of everything you took in. All the calories put together. Okay? Alright. Independent, blank, dependent, your level of happiness. So let's say on a scale 1 to 10, your happiness right now, a 3. A 1.5. Okay. So there's your level of happiness. So what would be independent? Huh? You can't give me a total number because you already gave me a total number for dependent. So think number of.
Things that make you happy.
Number of things that make you happy. Pretty simple, okay? So independent is a quantity, a number of something. Dependent's a total amount of something, okay? So keep that in mind. Okay, we got that? Okay, let's go down to this graph right here. Okay, so it says refer to the following graph for questions 5, 6, and 7. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. Alright, so we have a graph, and we have it labeled. Obviously, this is your y-axis, right? Going up and down. So this is y right here. So that means this is x going side to side, right? Okay. Hasn't changed since like 4th grade, right? Okay, what's your independent variable? It's your x-axis. Okay, so we're going to write x-axis. Now, on graphs, x-axes are usually labeled. Number of pizza toppings. So if it's labeled, usually that's what it's asking for. So when like they ask for a graph, like the independent variable of a graph, usually they're asking for the labeling of that axis. Now if you say, hey, it's x-axis, yeah, you're right. But there's a little bit more. Okay? So what's your dependent variable? Cost of pizza. And it's your y-axis, right? There you go. Now, how are the independent and dependent variables related? Okay, so, how are these related? Think about when you go to Pizza Hut or Domino's or Gaddy's, whatever, I don't know. What?
Maybe like, however many pizza toppings you get cost a certain amount of money. So
There you go.
You have to think about that.
There you go. The number of pizza toppings. So the number of pizza toppings affects, is it EF or AF?
EF, because effect is like particle effect.
There you go. Effect or affects the cost. Perfect.
A.
Oh, it's an A? Okay, affects. There you go. Okay, so there you go. Like I know, like I order Domino's all the time, and I go straight to the coupons. 2 topping, 2 large pizzas, this many per pizza. Every time. Jalapeno and pepperoni is my favorite. Okay? Crunchy thin. Now, my wife, on the other hand, she picks a different one every time, so I never know what she wants. So, it obviously changes the cost every time. I don't think I ever pay the same twice because of my wife. Okay? Alright, so let's flip the page. Okay, we got these right here. This goes for 8 and 9. What are the independent and dependent variables of this table? Independent is what? Your X values, but what's the label? Number of hours. Now, if you are confused, you're like, well, I don't know which one's X and which one's Y. Always, 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 the first one's X, and always the second one is Y. Always. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Okay, so then dependent variable is? Okay, it's your Y value and John's test score. Good. Perfect. So now, number 9. How are the independent and dependent variables related? There you go. The number of hours you study affects your score. So, number of hours study affects the test score. Perfect. So if you don't study at all,
You're going to get a lower test.
alright, so with that being said, let's go down to this last one. Okay, this last one. It says, okay, what are the independent and dependent variables of this table? Independent? Number of guests. Perfect. So that's independent. Dependent? Meal time or meal prep time. Okay, so how do independent and dependent variables relate to each other? What's that? There you go, the number of guests affect meal prep time. So, I mean, obviously, if there's not very many guests, you don't have to spend a whole lot of time prepping for a meal. If you have a lot of people, like when you have like family get-togethers, Thanksgiving, Christmas, if a lot of people show up, your parents are probably going crazy because they're like, stay out of the kitchen, I'm trying to cook, trying to do this, trying to do that, right?
I do that every day.
Yes? Yeah? Okay. But if, like, say, you and your friend come over to the house, your mom's or parents are probably like, oh, yeah, here's you some snacks, whatever, and it's quick, right? Makes sense, okay? So, that's independent and dependent variable. So, that's all independent and dependent is. Independent X, number of something. Dependent is your Y. It's a total amount of something. Okay, your independent affects or affects your dependent. Okay? Whatever the independent is, that makes a huge deal on your dependent. Okay?